dun dun. Rum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-da-da-dum bum bum ba-dum ba-ba-dum. Hello, my friends. So great to see you all. Hi, I see everybody coming in. Hi, Susie B. from the Exumas in the Bahamas. Great to see you. Phyllis, it's so wonderful to see everyone from, here's Esther from Florida and Lynn from Louisiana. And hi, Harry. Nice to see you all. Great to see you, friends. It's Monday night, and this is what we do every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. We do one thing and one thing only, and that is we do homeopathy. I teach you what I know. I share with you information, and I like to see you helping each other, because that's what this is all about, is community. It's not just knowledge and information. It's about connecting to each other, which is why we have gateway classes and groups and study groups, etc., that meet on a regular basis. So, my friends, my name is Joette Calabrese, and I'm here every Monday night, as I said. And this is what we do. And for those of you who already know me, it is wonderful to see all my friends here. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for taking time out of your busy Monday night and joining me and everyone else. Hi, Irene from Montreal. Wonderful. Oak Brook, Illinois. Jennifer, Los Angeles. Lynn, it's wonderful to see everyone. So, tonight we are going to talk about Lyme. And I've talked about this so many times, but tis the season. This is what we're headed into right now. The season for ticks and insect bites in general. And so, why not repeat it? Because sometimes new information comes out. I don't know that there is that much new information about it. People are questioning whether or not what it is, where it really came from. Why is it that all of a sudden there's a problem in the last, well, actually it showed up at around the 1970s in Lyme, Connecticut. Late 70s, I think it was, but it didn't proliferate for quite some time. And now we're wondering, what the heck is it really? So this is what I'm going to put out there, friends. I don't know what it is. They say it's a virus, but who knows about viruses? But whatever it is, whether it's virus, bacterial, man-made, whatever it may be, my friends, the action is the same homeopathically. Because we're going to make an assumption that it has to do with the poison from a tick, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So now, is it there's so many things that we don't know, and as soon as the science is settled, I have to tell you, my friends, that's when I really start questioning. So we're going to go by symptoms. We're going to start with one situation. And I know that you know this if you've been here with me before. If you don't, I want you to, this is a writer-downer. And you can also find this, Joette Calabrese-实Lyme Disease, because I've written 3 articles on it. And I've actually been part of Lyme conferences and spoken in large venues such as that. But the first line that we use, where we start is, we use Ledum pilastra. Ledum, Ledum pilastra, 200C. Now, what does that do? Well, Ledum is our medicine that is specific for puncture wounds, and in a way, it's a puncture wound, right? It's also excellent for insect bites, any kind of insect bite, and animal bites in general, even dogs, cats, rats, bats, any kind of animal bite. We're going to start with Ledum 200C. That's the way I learned this years ago when I was a classical homeopath. And oddly enough, yes, there were protocols in classical homeopathy, not very many, and they were not very proud to get them out there because they believed that protocols were not individualized enough. But my friends, a condition is a condition is a condition. A disease is a disease. And if somebody has an insect bite, a tick bite, we're going to go with what we use for tick bites. We're not going to look for the simillimum for the whole person, the mind, body, spirit business. I don't go for any of that thinking. I used to, and I apologize to those of you who received my information early on in my career, which was close to 40 years ago, 38 years ago. So, just a little parenthetic aside. Let me say that we're going to use Ledum pilastra, and if the day that the person gets the bite, they take off the tick the proper way. I'm sure you know there are many ways to do it. People have talked about it, and somebody use a credit card and scrape it off, and then keep that tick. Keep it. Put it in a bottle. Put some alcohol in the bottle, alcohol such as vodka or brandy. Label it, who it was found on, and the date. Put it aside. Because for those of you who know, we can make homeopathic medicines from the substance that caused the condition. But my friends, it's unlikely you'll ever need to do that. Just kind of an interesting aside. When we were raising our children, we lived in the country and we were exposed to ticks all the time. Our goats were, our dog was, our cat, my children. I mean, there were always ticks attached to someone somewhere. And so I had a number of jars all lined up in the pantry with ticks in them with a little alcohol, a date, and the name of the sufferer, if you could say. But to be honest, we never suffered. Why? Perhaps there was no problem with the ticks. Perhaps it was because we used Ledum 200C, and I've gone between a couple of different ways of looking at this. I have told people who are very, very anxious, you can use Ledum 200C every 3 to 4 hours for the first day or so. But to be honest, I was never really worried. And as you travel on this path, my friends, you're going to worry less, because you're going to see that there's really not that much to be concerned about, that the real conditions in life have very little to do with infections. So let's get back to that. And so what I used was I would use Ledum 200C twice a day for just a few days, maybe a week. By the time the week was up, by day 4 or 5, I'd forgotten about it. We just didn't think about it anymore, and I didn't follow through. But many people are very concerned about this and are worried that every day there's, if their child gets a tick, that they need to take care of it and take it every day. And look, I'm not begrudging your method of doing that and your fear, but I will tell you, not begrudging is not the word, belittling. But I do want you to know that as time goes on, you will see there's less and less to be afraid of, because we know our medicines. We've got them. We've got to know how to use them. So now we're going to get questions about what about if I've had Lyme disease. I was told I was diagnosed with Lyme disease from 2 years ago. And I always say, if you look up Joette Calabrese Lyme disease, you're going to see my take on it. I believe that when someone is tested for Lyme, are we being tested for every possibility that could be causing the trouble the person is suffering, such as fatigue, joint pain, muscle pain, etc.? Are we sure that it's Lyme that is the etiology, that's the actual cause? Or are we just showing that there might be some Lyme in the lab, in the blood lab that's presented? So that is something that I like to put out there, so that you can start thinking, well, how many diseases were you tested for? How do you know for sure it was that one? What if there's another disease that's out there and you know nothing about it and you're blaming Lyme? So here's the way that I look at it, as a good homeopath should look at it. What are the symptoms, my friends? If you're experiencing symptoms from having been attacked by a tick that may or may not have had Lyme, if you're experiencing symptoms, we use the symptoms, because symptoms are our gifts. Symptoms don't lie. The only time symptoms lie, and I said this so many times, is if you're taking a drug and you're counting a side effect as a symptom. So we're not looking at that. We're looking at anything that has occurred as a result, or shortly after, not perhaps as a result, but shortly after having been attacked by a Lyme tick. So if there is fatigue, great fatigue, then we're going to use a homeopathic medicine for fatigue, right? Right? Because we don't really absolutely know the so-called root cause. Just because it showed up in a test, I'm sorry, I don't believe that that's necessarily the method of knowing. But what we do know for sure is what the person is suffering. They're suffering fatigue. Now, there are a lot of causes for fatigue. We don't have to know them all, but certainly if there is a cause that's related, that does seem related to ever since around that time, okay, then we're going to use a medicine for fatigue, and that might be, say, gelsemium. It might be China 200, which is also known as cinchona bark. But more often than not, my friends, is the symptoms of joint and muscle pain. And so the person generally goes to their doctor and says, I've got this joint and muscle pain and I don't know what to do about it. And if the doctor is a naturopath, a functional MD, etc., they're going to say, well, let's draw some blood and do a lab and let's see what shows up. And then there's Lyme plus, well, you wonder about what about all the other conditions, all the other diseases. What about strep and staph, etc.? We could keep going with this. But the point is, the person went to the doctor with joint and or muscle pain. So what do we use? We use a homeopathic medicine that's specific for joint and muscle pain. Now, let me tell you, my friends, for those of you who are new, we are not treating the symptoms. We're not suppressing symptoms. We don't suppress symptoms. The idea here is to use the symptoms to determine which medicine is the correct one, and then utilize that, use that medicine, and then the symptoms will abate. And you take the medicine until the abatement. If the symptoms are much improved in 3 days, does it mean we carry on? No, we stop. We stop using the medicine. If the symptoms abate in 2 weeks, what do? Do we carry on like this is a vitamin that's going to be taken or a supplement forever? No. No, we are going to use it until we see improvement. Once there's great improvement, until VMB, very much better, then we go ahead, we stop the medicine. If the symptoms return, do we say, oh no, here it is again, this must not have helped? No, instead we think, oh cool, I know exactly what to do. Because the last time I used this medicine that's specific for muscle and joint pain, it acted. So what am I going to do? Use that medicine again. For how long? Until the symptoms abate. Do we repeat it again? We repeat it if it's necessary. How do we know it's necessary? The symptoms present. See how easy this is? It's super easy. So now if they're joint pains, we're going to use Rhus tox. Right, friends? Yep. Rhus tox. Thank you, Kimberly. Yes, we're going to use Rhus tox. And I like Rhus tox when we're first starting out and we're first learning about homeopathy. But even if we're not, for this kind of pain, generally speaking, it's Rhus tox 30. Rhus tox 30C. If all you've got is 30X, then by all means use 30X. But it's generally 30C in today's world. That's the most common. And then we also can use Bryonia. Bryonia, Bryonia. Rhus tox, RHUS TOX is the second word, and Bryonia, Bryonia. And I'm sure that people are going to jot it down for me. Thank you, so that others can see how this is spelled. And by the way, my friends, these medicines are in Latin, always in Latin, because they're the real substance. They're not made up commercial names. And they're phonetic, because Latin is phonetic. So it's super easy. Bryonia, Bryonia. All right, and then you're going to use that. Well, if the pain is awful, it could certainly be used every few hours. Let's say every 3 hours. And then as the person improves, we're going to open up. We're going to taper it away. We're not going to use the medicine so frequently. Instead of every 3 hours, we're going to go to every 6 hours. As the person improves further over the period of a day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, whatever it takes, then we're going to open it up to to get to a point where approximately twice a day. And if the person is much improved, they'll 12 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours, 9 in the morning, 9 at night, 9 in the morning, 9 at night, for example. If there's much improvement, then we back off of that. Don't take the morning dose. Take only the evening dose of Rhus tox 30 and Bryonia 200C. And when it is resolved, guess what we do? We back off. We just back off. This is the medicine we've all been looking for. This is the medicine without the side effects. This is the medicine that gives us health, freedom, the kind of freedom we never thought was available. We never thought possible, because we've been trained at a very early age to believe that somebody else knows all this information. Somebody else is the expert. Someone else has expertise and you don't. But you do. If you're hanging out here, or you're taking any of my classes, or you've been studying homeopathy, you know what to do. Maybe not every single case and every situation, but that's okay. Learn it. Just take advantage of the information I give you for free. I've been putting these Monday night lives out for many years. Every Monday night, it's free for you to use and for you to share. And we also have my blog, which is put out every Sunday night. And that's been about 14 years. Every single Sunday night, there is free information for you to use and to share, and for you to increase not just your ability and your own personal expertise, but your personal strength, to feel as though you don't have to worry, my friends. You don't have to be afraid of this. Now, let me also say that if after doing what I've just told you, Ledum pilastra 200C, etc., Rhus tox and Bryonia for the joint pains, China perhaps, or Gelsemium for fatigue, if that still is a problem. It might not be. If you use Rhus tox and Bryonia, you might find that fatigue just melts away right along with the joint pains. But if one absolutely must, then we can talk about the nosode called Lyme nosode. Some places it's called that, or Borrelia, Borelia is the name of the nosode, and that is do I have that spelled correctly? Borrelia, I think so. And we can use that in a 30C, and then you just use it for twice a day for a few weeks. But don't do it all. Choose what's most important. Edit what you're doing. Be a wordsmith. Be a remedy smith. Figure out exactly what needs to be done. Allow the medicines to fully act. Only go to another medicine, another idea. Move to the nosode, or to which is the Borrelia, or only go to China or Gelsemium for the fatigue. Only if these other Ledum and Rhus tox and Bryonia are not acting. And give them time, my friends. Days, weeks, at least a few weeks, at least. Give it at least 4 or 6 weeks. Okay, nosode is just a category of a homeopathic medicine. So I'm sorry, I probably should not have brought it up, because there are enough people here who don't really know what a nosode is. Borrelia is a nosode is made from the actual product, actually made from the Lyme tick and potentized, made into homeopathic medicine. So, Harry, are you talking to Perry? Let's see. Works well in, okay, folks are what is the nosode called? I answered that. Got it. Okay. The treatment for other tick diseases such as anaplasmosis be the same as the Lyme treatment. If it's a tick, we're going to use the same thing, except we're going to skip the specific nosode of Borrelia. Yes, we're going to use the same method. A tick, an insect bite, whether it's a bee sting, we're still going to use Ledum. We can use Apis for bee stings, but we often use Ledum for insect bites, for mosquitoes. There are other medicines that we can consider, my friends, but let's learn about Ledum first. Let's see. Joette, any suggestions from Lyme turning into Morgellons. I'm sorry, I am unfamiliar. Morgellons. I don't know. Morgellons, is Morgellons a specific disease? And so Lyme turning into something. Why not just use what I just told you to use and not worry about what it may have turned into unless you're really stuck. In other words, start with this protocol, my friends. And if it doesn't act and it transfers or moves into a completely different disease or condition, we're going to still use the symptoms from that disease to determine what medicine to use. So be careful of going too far with testing. Look, I think testing can have a use, but I think that we are a society of test-happy people. I think we go so crazy. We want it to be so scientific, but what happens is it often confounds the situation because it encourages people to not think about what the symptoms are so as to find a homeopathic medicine. They're thinking about, oh my gosh, oh, I have this condition or that condition. Morgellons is a specific disease, but I'm afraid I don't know anything about it. Entrenched lime, fresh lime. Lime. This is the protocol, my friends. This is the protocol. Yes, and the tests are not accurate. Thank you very much, Leanne. There are a lot of tests that are not accurate. A lot of tests. So, and it throws us into a way of thinking that we may have a difficult time climbing out of again. Okay, what about chat link on the right? People are talking about live stream window and how to look at this in a different fashion is my guess. All righty. Let's see if we have any other questions, because in a few minutes I will go to my mighties. I will leave the social media and I'll go directly to my mighties group and answer questions for them. I just, what is the strength for bryonia? Yep, I already talked about that. You can watch this again. This will be up again by tomorrow, usually by tomorrow afternoon. Let's see what else we've got. What about swelling edema in the knees from Lyme? My friend has that. Let's use a swelling edema in the knees, the knee swelling and edema. Excuse me, the knees swelling that is edematous, water-filled. I know you folks are going to know what remedy to consider using for this. It's another medicine that is also great for insect bites but it causes edema. So what could that be? Let's see what you folks come up with. So I would still use the protocol that I'm talking about here, but given that the symptoms are specific to this person's knees and it's edematous, now we're talking about, thank you very much, Mindy, apis. That's right. Jennifer, thank you. Apis. Pat, yes. Apis, yes. Linda says apis, yes. What potency for gelsemium for fatigue? I often use a 30 or a 200. Apis, says Susie. Rochelle says apis. Yes, absolutely. I would still use the same, because regardless of what the symptoms are, and these are the most common symptoms, what I've just covered, but if it shows in a slightly different way, then I'm going to use a different medicine, right? Apis or nat sulf. I don't know about nat sulf. It's certainly a possibility, but I think of apis for two reasons. One is because of the edema, and number two, because it was perhaps from an insect bite. So both of those hold that medicine in better stead. All righty. So we're doing all right. Good questions. I don't think of nat sulf for that. Let's see what else we've got. What potency? Apis, I would use a 30. Apis is 30. Could be a 200. Either one of those could act. 30s and 200s are the most frequently used potencies. If a tick is embedded, silica, I suppose. I don't think of silica being able to push out a tick. I think of silica pushing out a shard, a glass shard, or a branch, or a piece of wood, or something like that. I suppose it could be tried, and then if it works, do let us know. Silica can also be useful though for skin infections too. Okay, someone was bitten by an ill cat and is being treated with rabies shots. Helps and hints. Well, Joylyn, I urge people to get my survivalist guide for things like that. I'm not going to tell you, that's right there, if you can see it right there. And you go to Joette's Learning Center and scroll down till you get to survivalist guide. Because why by ill cat, I wonder what that means. Does it mean that the cat had an infected tooth? Does it mean that the person is infected? Is et cetera, et cetera. So you'd want to know a little bit more. But for extreme situations, more extreme situation, even not so extreme, that Joette's survivalist guide is very useful for that. What about the cat with rabies? So, does the cat have rabies? Are you sure about that? My friends, are you sure about that? Rabies is not very common. It's very uncommon, extremely uncommon. Might be good to find out if that cat has rabies. Now, unfortunately, in order to find out if an animal has rabies, I think they have to sacrifice it. But I'd like to know how often rabies is shows up in that vicinity, in that area, in that county, that state, that province. You can usually interchange remedies 30C and 200 potency if only you have only one of the other. Well, if it's not an exact protocol, you can do that. If you really want these medicines to act and it's a specific protocol, then you want to use the exact potency, if at all possible. So for Leadum 200, I would not. Could you use a 30? You could if that's all you had, but I would be prepared in advance to have the 200. Ditch the cat, get a dog. Harry. Stramonium is for rabies. Listen is for rabies, yes. No canine rabies in the U.S. in 18 years per the CDC. Thank you, Leanne. Very uncommon. And that's canine rabies, but what about bat rabies? Same thing. I don't know what the numbers are, but I would look into that before I start thinking about being concerned about that. Okay, let's see. Harry. But is there such a thing as rabies? Yeah, most likely a poisoning. A good point, Leanne. Good point. I mean, I'm sorry, friends. What happened in 2020, 21, 22, 23 has got a lot of people, intelligent, educated people, questioning what we've been taught and trained to believe for a very long time. So I'm going to say, who knows? We don't really know. But I will say, here's Leanne has a link here. Thank you very much, Leanne. DrSamBailey.com regarding rabies. Hurry, I am a cat lover. Or Harry, I am a cat lover and help many people heal their cats with homeopathy. I know. Kimberly, don't take it personally. Harry's just a funny guy. Melissa says cat scratch fever. Cat scratch fever is something to be concerned about. Yeah, it is something to be concerned about. And then I would indeed use the survivalist guide. Yep. If that cat has, or the person has cat scratch fever, that's a bacteria infection. And we usually use Hyper Rs. And you can look it up, Joette Calabrese, Hypericum mixed with Arsenicum. Harry says, that's okay, Kimberly. You were part of our old homeopathic group at Friends Meeting House. I like I like in spite. Oh. Yeah, Kristen says, a silver lining from the pandemic, many people's eyes were open. Yes, we start questioning a lot more, don't we? And it's a good thing. Yeah, we needed to question a lot for a very long time. So my friends, we're at half the hour. And so I'm going to go to Just My Mighties. And so I'm going to say goodbye to everyone else and see you next Monday night. And we'll be talking about another fascinating subject and homeopathy. And meanwhile, I'm going to say good night to all except my mighties. Stay on, mighties.